T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong reported back when he received the good wishes. Thank you very much. We know it will be a good flight. Good luck and Godspeed. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6.
Hello. Now I've been discussing moon landings, space exploration, you know, probes and satellites and NASA on YouTube with lots of commentators, and you know, I've come to the point where, you know, I've had to make this little video just to put forward my point of view, because some people just don't seem to understand things. Okay, so what we're going to do in this little video is I'll show you a few diagrams just to explain a few things, and then what I will do is we'll use an experiment using my homemade, very cheap balloon car, which is wonderful. And when I've finished, I might even take it out for a little spin somewhere, see how far we get. Okay, so this is what we're going to do, so you know what to expect in the following video. Okay, now we've got two positions. A lot of pro-moon landers and people who think rockets work in space, they all think that rockets work in space. Yeah, of course. And there's me on the other hand, where I don't think rockets work in space. Now, I'll give you their understanding, and then I'll give you my understanding, and then we'll leave it to you to sort out. But anyway, okay, now whenever you talk to a pro-moon lander or someone who promotes the idea of NASA and space exploration, they always use Newton's third law of motion to explain how a rocket works. Now, I think Newton's third law is very, very good. It's very easy to understand. It's all about basically action, reaction. So for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So for example, if we blew a balloon up, okay, if we inflated a balloon with our air, okay, what we'd have is that the air inside the balloon will push against the inner walls of the balloon, obviously evenly distributed throughout. Okay, and as a result of this, the reaction would be the balloon pushes in on the air. Now that's very easy to understand. I can understand that, I can accept that. I think it's a very good way of looking at things. Now the difficulty arises is when we put a nozzle on the end and we have an outlet for the air to rush out. Okay, there's my little balloon lip. Okay, so essentially pro-moon landers and people at NASA as well, they all tend to think that the action of the air rushing out at high speed, okay, in this direction will give you an equal and opposite reaction in this direction, which acts upon the inner wall of the balloon and thus propels it forward. Obviously, you know, when we let go of a balloon, it just pops out and flies everywhere. But that's their explanation as to how it works. Okay, now if we take a look at a rocket engine, okay, a rocket, what we'd see is that here's my little rocket. Okie dokie, dum dum dum. There's my nozzle. Pretty good, eh? Now we've got the fuel and oxidizer tanks. We've got pipes which lead down to pumps and turbines and things, which basically pump the fuel and the oxidizer into the combustion chamber, where they use hypergolic fuels, so they ignite upon contact with oxygen, and they cause a rapid expansion of gases, and then they expand out at very, very high speed to create thrust, or a thrust force, which then gets chocked out the back of the nozzle. Okay, now pro-moon landers and lots of people at NASA tend to think, or tend to promote the idea, that merely the action of the exhaust coming out from the combustion here to here will create an opposite and equal reaction that forces, or that causes, the rocket to move, to be propelled forward. Okay, so basically all of these all of these, the fuel and the liquid, the molecules moving in one direction here, cause an equal and opposite reaction actually on the base of the rocket, which pushes it forward. Now that's their idea on how a rocket works. One very important thing to mention, and that is as soon as all these gases here leave the nozzle, they are no longer effective in the forward propulsion of the rocket. That's what pro-moon landers and people at NASA say. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. Okay, now here's my explanation as to how a rocket works. Okay, so here we go again. There we go. We've got our little big wide nozzle there. There we go. We've got our fuel tanks and oxide tanks. We've got the pipe work, goes down to turbines. Now, so the fuel and the oxidizer get pumped into the thrust chamber or into the combustion chamber, very high speed. You get a burn or combustion of the gases. They expand and they are forced out through the nozzle at extremely high speeds. Obviously, when we watch a rocket lift off and launch, we see this. You know, it's clearly observable. Now, what I think happens is that the action of this thrust force here causes a reaction by the mass that is behind the rocket. So if I just turn this around for everyone to see. So the rocket, the thrust force coming out the nozzle hits the mass, and the mass gives an opposite and equal reaction that acts on the contact area here that pushes the rocket in this direction. One very important thing that a lot of people tend to overlook, and that is a rocket is one mass system. So all of this, all of that there should be regarded as one mass system. You've got fuel, you've got thrust, and you've got the actual mass of the rocket itself. All that is one mass system, and that solely acts on the mass, whether it be the Earth, whether it be atmosphere, that gives you an equal and opposite reaction. So that's my understanding of how a rocket works. Okay, now we're going to put this to the test, because a lot of people that I've been speaking to can't seem to get their head around this idea or not, and I certainly can't get my head around their idea. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use our little balloon car as our little experiment to see who's right and who is wrong, because I think it's something that certainly needs to be addressed, as there's an awful lot of misconception concerning balloon cars and rockets and everything. So anyway, let's blow it up, and there we go, and see how well it performs, see what it does. There we go. So we've blown up our balloon, and there we go. There we go. And as you can see, there we go. It's going pretty well. There you go. Hits the wall, and I can even feel the air coming out the back there. Okay. Now, just so that everybody understands what's going on. Okay. What people at NASA and people who think rockets work in space think how this would work, if they apply their reasoning to how this works. The air rushes out of the balloon through the tube, through the bottle here, through the straw, okay, and merely that the motion of the air in this direction causes an equal and opposite reaction on the inside of the balloon, inner wall of the balloon at the front, which then pushes it forwards. Okay, it's very easy to understand. Whereas what I'm saying basically is that the air just coming out of the straw acts on the atmosphere that's in the room, which causes a reaction, which then pushes the whole lot forward. Because you've got to remember, and that is that the air coming out of the straw actually moves with the vehicle. It doesn't get left behind or anything, it actually moves with it. That's why we have to remember that it's a mass system. Okay, so how we're going to check to see whether who's right or who's wrong is what we're going to do. We're going to divert the air that comes out of the straw, end of the straw. And we can do this simply by using a piece of paper. Now, I'm not sure, I don't think I need to go over what the balloon car is made from. I'm sure everyone can see that it's, you know, we've got a straw, we've got some axles, it's only been sellotaped together, it's on a piece of cardboard, there's a balloon there, you know, it's very straightforward. So what we're going to do now is we're going to attach our piece of paper to, let's get it around the right way. We're going to attach, there we go. Oh no, I think I may have to get another piece of, there we go. So we've got that on there. Now I've got a piece right here. Now this is, I'm putting this here just to ensure that the paper doesn't drag on the surface here and cause extra friction, just to lift it off the ground. Right, okay, so I just need to cut myself just a quick piece of sellotape, if I can very quickly do it. Everybody can I don't know, put their feet up, go and make a cup of coffee just while I cut this small piece of sellotape here. There we go. There we go, that's all done. Okay. Now, let's quickly blow it up, okay? Okay, there we go. Now, here we go. Now I'm going to put the paper, I hope everyone can see this. There's at least a 2-inch gap there. I'm not sure whether everyone can see that. There we go. There's a gap where the straw, from the distance from the end of the straw to the paper is about two inches or so, something like that. So it gives somebody an idea that basically you're not restricting the air movement that's coming out of the bottle and the straw. So because the air can dissipate everywhere out the sides and everything. Okay. Now, if Pro Moonlanders are correct in that the air moving this direction will cause an equal and opposite direction force in that direction, then it should move. Whereas if I'm correct and that it needs the mass of the atmosphere to act against, this shouldn't move, basically, okay? Because we've actually diverted the thrust force of the balloon car, okay? So we're going to now put it to the test. So here we go. Let's just line it up. Here we go. And we're off. And we're off. And we're off. It's not moving. What we're going to do, oh poo, it's not working at all and it's not moving. The balloon's going down, the air's coming out the straw, it's hitting the straw, I can feel the air from the side, and it hasn't moved one little bit. Now what we're going to do now is that the only way to know whether it's the atmosphere or not that makes a big difference is that what we're going to do is we're going to blow it up again, but we'll leave the paper on. Now, Now logic has it that if this balloon car now moves, is propelled forward, even with the paper on, the only difference to the vehicle is the fact that what we've done is that we're going to leave the paper in this position so the air can still act against the atmosphere. So let's have a little look and see what it does. Okay, oh, there we go, and we've got propulsion. Not very good propulsion. It's oh no, they hit the wall. Let's try that again. We're going to try that again. Okay, what it could be is the actual paper resting on the surface, which is causing a lot of friction. That could be why it's not working. But here we go. Let's try it again. Oh, there we go. And it's off. It's going. It's going. If we can get continual motion, we'll be fine. Oh, I think we might have to do that one more time. I'll tell you what, let's try this. Let's try. What we'll do is, look. All we'll do. There we go. That's easier. That makes it easy. Now, let's try this. Now, there we go. All we've done is torn the paper. Okay, here we go. We're going to let go right now. And there we go. Now that is absolutely brilliant, isn't it? Basically, what that's showing to us is that it's the force of the air coming out of the straw that basically acts against the atmosphere, which gives you a reaction. And that's what pushes the vehicle forward. And this principle is exactly the same for how a rocket works. So therefore, if we go back to think about how rockets work in space, I'm trying to find there we go. If we go back to how a rocket works in space, we have to remember that in space there is a vacuum where basically matter is very sparsely populated in a given area. Okay, so what's going to happen to our rocket when it's in space or in a vacuum of space? Oh, I think my pen's running out. There we go. Okay, so you got fuel tanks and my pen's running out. There we go. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have the fuel, or what could happen I should say, is let me just change my pen. There we go. We've got a nice purpley one here. There we go. There we go. That's better. What's going to happen in a vacuum when the rocket's in space, and that is the fuel is going to be pumped out. Okay, you're going to have combustion. You're going to have the thrust force coming out. Okay, out of there. But there is no mass there for it to act upon. Therefore, you won't get the reaction in this direction. You will not get that because there is no mass for this thrust force to act upon. Now that's we've clearly demonstrated that with the balloon car in the video. But also one of the major factors of why a rocket will not work in space is that we also have the idea of free expansion. So basically with free expansion, what we can see with free expansion, and that is when we have our rocket here. There we go, and we have our pipe work going into the combustion chamber. As soon as the valves are open to allow the fuel and the oxidizer into the combustion chamber, they'll just be sucked straight out by the vacuum of space, like this. And the rocket will just remain stationary. It won't go anywhere. So there's two really big points about why rockets don't work in space. We've got free expansion, plus also we've got the fact that of our little experiment with our balloon car. Now, I'm not sure about you, but after watching this video, I mean, how, you know, there's a lot of bullshit in life at the end of the day, and to me, rockets working in space is just part of it. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Hope you've enjoyed it, and you never know, I might see you on the moon sometime. We can have a cup of tea and stuff, maybe share a scone or whatever. Okay then, thanks ever so much. Bye for now.